Welcome back. You're watching Showdown, and I'm joined here in the Sky News studio by disaffected former Labor staffer Troy Bramson. Thanks for your company.
G'day, Peter.
Works for the Australian Now, of course, as well. And noted lefty Reece Muldoon. How are you going?
Very well, Pete.
Good to have you on the program, I guess. We're short of numbers. But we're joined now out of Canberra by our political guest, Arthur Sinodinos. That's Senator Arthur Sinodinos for the Liberal Party. Senator, thanks very much for your company.
Thanks very much, Peter. Good to see you again.
I've got a lot of respect for your economic opinions. You were Chief of Staff for a good decade or so to John Howard during some pretty serious, good economic times. Now, how comfortable are you that I'm going to have my hair come May next year? Because I've promised to shave it off if Wayne Swan achieves his budget surplus.
You're talking about by May next year?
Well, I'll wait till September to see the real numbers. But if they hold up from what he claims is the case in May, I've got to shave my head if he achieves the surplus.
Well, look, Peter, I think Wayne Swan will do whatever it takes to be able to post a surplus in the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook, which is due out, as I understand it, very soon. And he'll do whatever he can to try and have a surplus in the budget next year, at least in the numbers. What the outcome will be come September of next year is in the lap of forces way bigger than Wayne Swan, because I think one of the problems we've got today is that the tax base of the economy is contracting, but Labor has continued to spend. They've continued to increase their obligations, not only through the next couple of years, but over the next decade or so. And so we do face a fiscal challenge. Everybody is saying that if the budget was being formulated at the moment, there's no way you could put a $1.5 billion surplus in for 2012-13. I think one commentator was suggesting at Macquarie that $10 billion in revenue has been taken out of the economy since the budget was formulated. That's straight off the budget bottom line. So he's got a real challenge, but the word is here in Canberra that the government are doing whatever they can to find savings wherever they can, so they can at least put an accounting surplus into the numbers for the mid-year outlook, and then hope that they can skate through till at least the budget. I mean, their political challenge, as you know, is to get the primary vote up to the late 30s if they can, and also use that as a way of getting to the end of the year, warding off the Rudd challenge and hoping they can keep Rudd at bay through next year, which will be an election year.
But it's interesting because I accept what you say in the context of needing to do a little bit of fudging perhaps and moving things around the books to be able to get the surplus, but nonetheless you think perhaps courtesy of that they will still get there. That puts you at odds with Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey, doesn't it? Because he's made it clear in countless interviews that he doesn't think that there's any chance that Wayne Swan will ever deliver a budget surplus.
No, I'm saying we'll have to wait till September next year to see whether we do get a surplus for 2012-13. But I was saying they do whatever it takes to try and present an accounting surplus in this mid-year review, and then potentially if they get to the budget next year. I know why Joe is sceptical, and as I was saying before, I think if you're framing the budget now, it'd be very hard to even put an accounting surplus into those numbers.
Are you disappointed that your side of politics, in a sense, caved in on supporting the shift from 9 to 12% superannuation? I mean, during the 10 years that you worked for John Howard, the coalition held pretty strong on the fact that it wasn't going to move on compulsory super from 9%, yet all of a sudden they fall into opposition, and now you're an elected member of the Federal Liberal Party and you're supporting a move to 12%.
Look, it's true to say that the coalition was always very sceptical about the move to compulsory super. We thought it was better to try and encourage people voluntarily to get into super, but we inherited a certain system. We allowed the superannuation guarantee to get up to 9%, but we were cognizant of the pressures, particularly on small business. People say, well, you know, small business can say to their workers, well, instead of a wage rise, we'll give it to you via super, but you still have to find the cash and the money. Now, I wasn't privy to the process by which the coalition in the end decided to go from 9 to 12, but I can tell you that in government the coalition will do whatever it can to try and assuage some of the cost and other impacts on small business, because we're conscious that the environment today is getting tougher for business, particularly outside the mining parts of the economy, and even in the mining parts we are starting to see a slowing, so that the Reserve Bank are now saying that the peak of the investment cycle in mining will be lower and earlier than was earlier anticipated.
Just in terms of news of the day, why on earth wouldn't Tony Abbott, when he's overseas talking to the Indonesian president, raise the idea of towbacks of boats? He said that he would before he left. This is a pretty key cornerstone, as he keeps telling us, of his policy on deterring boat arrivals, yet he's decided not to raise it with the Indonesian president. Why?
Look, he may have been advised to leave it to Julie Bishop and Scott Morrison to raise in the meeting that they had with I think it was the Indonesian foreign minister.
But advised or not, it looks weak, doesn't it, for him not to raise it when it's such a totemic issue for him and he's got the chance there one-on-one to actually meet with Yudhoyono? Well,
I think President Yudhoyono knows what the coalition policy is. He may well have been aware that it would be discussed in a separate meeting with with his Indonesian foreign minister. So in that sense, I think the cards are all on the table. I think the thing that would change if you have a coalition government in Canberra on this issue is that the people smugglers would know that we would be implementing a full suite of policies, and that hopefully would have a deterrent effect from early on and in fact obviate the need to be turning the boats back. But people would know that there is a determination to do that when it is safe to do so, on advice from obviously the Navy. And I think the Indonesian authorities would be doing everything at their end in that situation to stop boats leaving as well. I think they have more confidence in having a partner in Australia that means business on this issue.
Just back on the economy, if I can. I mean, a little later in the program, we've got an expert on housing policy that's going to be joining us after the commercial break. But is it always a good thing for the Reserve Bank to be looking at reducing interest rates? We always talk about it in the context of homeowners, therefore having less of a burden, I suppose, in terms of their repayments. But less than a quarter of people of relevant age are, in fact, in a position where they have a mortgage. Most people rent. People that are on self-funded retirement packages are disadvantaged when interest rates come down. On balance, is it necessarily a good thing when there's a lot of people out there that really are hurt rather than helped when interest rates go down?
Look, when the Reserve Bank adjusts monetary policy, it's doing this in the context of the impact on the economy as a whole. Housing is an interest rate sensitive sector in many ways, but the Reserve Bank is looking at the overall balance between supply and demand in the economy, where the economy is going over the next 12 to 18 months. So it has to set its policy to meet a target of keeping inflation in that 2 to 3% band. So there's a lot more at stake, important as housing is, than the housing sector when the Reserve Bank is setting policy. And what they're doing now is, I think they're being realistic. They realise business and consumer confidence is not flash, particularly outside the mining sector, which even now it is slowing, and so they're taking action to bolster that confidence. And don't forget, what a lot of people are doing at the moment is they're not necessarily reducing their mortgage payments as interest rates come down, but in fact accelerating their repayment. A lot of people are trying to get to a positive cash position as soon as they can. There's a lot of uncertainty around, and people are in a flight to cash at the moment, and people are trying to reduce their debt so they feel less vulnerable.
Senator, it's Troy Bramston here from the Australian newspaper. Can I ask you, the Liberal Party often like to position themselves as the free market party, the party of open markets and trade liberalisation. Can I ask you why the Liberal Party are not supporting getting rid of one of the last vestiges of agrarian socialism in the economy and not supporting the further deregulation of the bulk wheat export market, even though the Liberal Party voted for it in Parliament in 2008?
Comrade, deregulation is on the way. The press release that came out of the party room after our last meeting made it clear that there is no turning back the clock to the old wheat board or the single desk, that what is at stake here is dealing with a couple of issues that have arisen during the transition to full deregulation. These are around, I think, port access arrangements and a couple of other issues. But the point is that our feet as a coalition are now on the sticky paper. There is no going back, and that over the next couple of years in government, the coalition, I can guarantee you, will complete the process of wheat deregulation. But sometimes you've got to take a pause, deal with transitional issues, and that way you take the whole industry with you. And reform only sticks when you take everybody with you. And if it means you take slightly longer to get there, so be it, as long as you get the right result.
Senator Rees Muldoon wants to ask a question, but we'll do our best to avoid that. You're in Canberra at the moment for Senate estimates. One of the topics, of course, is Nicola Roxon and the whole issues surrounding Slipper and Ashby. You had a chance, I guess, during the Howard years to have a pretty close look at a couple of Attorney Generals in the shape of Ruddock and before that Darryl Williams. You're obviously a student of political history as well. How does the rather activist position, I guess if you could call it that Nicola Roxon is taking in the media compare with Attorney Generals from bygone eras?
Look, she's not acting as Attorney General, she's acting as judge, jury and executioner. I mean, what surprised me was, I think, the very day that this matter was going to court, that the Attorney General did a press conference to really put the boot in to Mr Ashby. I would have thought by that stage, the matter's going to court, let them fight it out in the court. Let the court decide. But the idea that the Attorney General may be briefing lawyers in this case and is trying to, if you like, shape the environment in which the case is heard is that's going beyond activists. That's sort of interfering with the whole process. And look, leaving all politics aside, one of the positions in government that's meant to be as apolitical and objective as possible for the good of the government and for the good of the country is the office of the Attorney General. And someone who comes across as a partisan, kicking, scratching, gouging, partisan political player, it does nothing for the dignity of the office, and I think Nicola Roxon has got to take a long, hard look at herself and the dignity of the office that she holds.
Senator Rees-Muldoon, just firstly on that topic, I think that's just a fascinating Liberal talking point, but pretty much rubbish. But I do have one question.
Take that as a comment?
No, I do have just one question, a most sincere one, because I do respect you very much as an economist. I have heard that you, with the Coalition's attitude towards the mining tax, I believe you're not quite on board, that you have certain misgivings about it. Is that true?
About what, the Coalition's attitude to the mining tax?
Yes. The current policy, the Coalition's current policy on the mining tax,
yeah.
Do you have certain misgivings that it doesn't sit too well with you?
No. I think what you're alluding to is that I've argued in the past that if you ever want to, introduce tax reform, you've got to do it in a way that takes the community with you. And what I've said is that the mining tax was a great case study in how not to do it. Now, if you're asking me, am I for or against the mining tax? I'm against the mining tax because I think it sent the wrong signal at the wrong time about the view we take about how we tax our great industries, the industries we expect to expand. So, Rees, comrade, I'm fully on board. Don't worry. You don't have to lose sleep at night thinking
Is that true?
I've departed from coalition policy.
Okay.
That's what happens when you get an actor to ask a politician a question.
Oh,
Sorry about that,
please.
Senator. But one final question before we let you go, if I can. I just want to read out two statements to you, and if you can let me know which you think is the more offensive statement and why. The first one is, what if men are by physiology or temperament more adapted to exercise authority or to issue command? The other is, what if whites are by physiology or temperament more adapted to exercise authority or to issue command? Which one's a more offensive statement?
What was the second one again? Can you repeat it?
What if whites, racial rather than sexist undertones, what if whites are by physiology or temperament more adapted to exercise authority or to issue command? I guess what I'm getting at is what's the difference between a sexist remark or a racist remark? When you put the words in, I would have thought that it sort of highlights the concern of the statement, doesn't it?
Look, first of all, let me say that I feel particularly sensitive on racial matters because I think we've been on a great journey in this country of coming to terms with some of the things that happened in our past, and we have to be very sensitive to those issues. On matters of sexism, let me say this, that I thought when the feminist movement arose in the 60s and 70s, as a society we were well on the way to dealing with the issues that movement brought to the fore. But I still find in workplaces across the country there are elements of sexism and bullying going on, and what I would like to see is politicians in Canberra focusing on that rather than trying to use issues of sexism allegedly to throw at each other for partisan political advantage.
No, fair point. All right, we appreciate you joining us on this episode of Showdown. Thanks very much, Arthur Sinodinos out of Canberra.
Thanks, mate.